Good morning, Sparky Wallace again. Well, let me set this story up. This is about sex education with goats. But that's got a few ears perked up. So I'll set this story up. Back in the early 2000s, must have been about 2003 or so. My son was in sixth grade. Now that's an important point there, and I remember this very distinctly. He was in sixth grade, and my girls were all starting to compete in high school, and they were tying goats at the time. So at that time we had quite a few goats, but we had these three pygmy goats, and if you know what a pygmy goat is, they're a smaller goat, and they look like what is called a kid. A kid is just a juvenile goat. So I'm setting this up so if you don't know what they mean, it's just a young goat. So we had these three pygmy goats. The girls had been tying, and let me preface that too. What they do is they run down the arena on a horse. They jump off. There's a goat that's staked out. I think it's 12 foot of rope. They run down, they throw this goat down, they tie it up. So that's what goat tying is. And these goats got a little fat, and they weren't very good to tie anymore. So we just let these goats run around the yard, being kind of redneck. Well, these goats were jumping up on vehicles and eating plants we didn't want them to eat, and just being a goat nuisance. So we called up some friends of ours in town that had a nice ranch just west of town. And their base of operations, which is their house and their corrals and their barn and that, was just about, I would say, 500 yards from the grade school. So it was fairly close to the grade school. So I called up and says, you guys want these goats? Because they had three little kids. And yeah, you'd probably have fun with them. You want these goats? Sure. So we give them these goats. So about a week later, I get a call relaying this story to me from the teacher at the grade school. Well, I think it was during lunch. All the kids were out on the playground. And lo and behold, these three goats show up at the grade school playground. And the kids are playing with them at lunch, Think, oh, this is pretty cool. Three little goats playing with them. Bell rings. Brrr. Kids run into school. These goats followed the kids in. Now, whether it is just happenstance or they knew my son, they ran in his class. Well, so these three goats ran in his class. Now, these three goats, there is two little nannies and one little billy goat. So they run in this class, and I don't know if it was whether the excitement, what caused it, or what. But all little kids are in there, and I think this is cool. This little billy goat mounts this little nanny goat. Now the teacher, he was quite a card anyway. And so he calls up the principal. I don't know if he called him. I don't know if there was a cell phone involved in this, because it was early 2000s. So I don't know if there was a cell phone involved or there was an intercom. But he calls up Chuck, the principal, and says, Chuck, get out of here right now. I've got two kids fornicating in class. Can you imagine what a principal would think? And something like that. So he hustles down to the classroom. There's these two goats locked up in passion in class. The kids are all going hysterical. Tom thinks it's freaking hilarious. So they get these goats out of class, kicked them out of the school. I suppose they made their way back home. So Tom calls me up that night and tells me this story. He says, yeah, he says, I called up Chuck and told him I had 2 kids fornicating in class. And to say the least, he was a little excited about it. And he says, that can only happen in a small community school. That 3 goats can show up in class and give the kids a first-hand lesson on sex education. And I says, oh boy. And when he called me that night, he was still laughing about it. And so that's been 22 years. And I still to this day think that just doesn't happen very often in a small school. So there you go. Sex education in Shoto grade school in 2003. Now I've got a few other goat stories that are just as good or even better than that one. And I'll relay them sometime. So there's another story for you from the plains of Montana. Thanks.